You know who we didn't talk about in yesterday's trade deadline palooza? We made 17 videos on the day, from the end game of Vancouver versus Minnesota all the way into the beginning of the night, with the Mikko Rantanen trade news and the Brock Nelson trade to Colorado. We made a bunch of commentaries, but you know who we didn't talk about in any of these videos? The Montreal Canadiens. Because, quite frankly, aside from a few roster moves involving Jacob Dobas and Owen Beck, Kent Hughes didn't do anything. And is a lot different with Montreal compared to my first favorite team, the Vancouver Canucks. When Patrick Allvin didn't do anything, a lot of Canucks fans were super surprised as to how that went down and how the team was not able to get any assets or even buy or do anything, really. But Kent Hughes, I think this comes from a much different place, and it's a better place as well. Today we're going to be talking about the Canadiens and how Kent Hughes might have actually done some really good work by doing nothing at all. This show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out that first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel in the process. What you're looking at right here is the Canadiens and their recent win streak that was since ended 2 nights ago against the Edmonton Oilers. The Habs beat the Ottawa Senators 5-2, then they beat the Hurricanes 4-0, they beat the San Jose Sharks in overtime 4-3, then had a 4-2 win against Buffalo, followed up by a 4-3 win against Buffalo, and then they lost to Edmonton in overtime on Thursday. The Habs are in a really tight race for that final wildcard spot, and if you head over to the not even just the Atlantic Division, but just the East in general, you will see that, hey, Montreal doesn't really have a chance of overtaking one of Florida, Toronto, or Tampa. They kind of have to buy their way into the playoffs via the wild card. They're 1 point behind Ottawa with one more game played. But right in the thick of it is Columbus with one more point than Ottawa. New York has one more game played than Ottawa, but they have the same amount of points. Detroit is in there as well, and the Bruins are right on everybody's tail too. So it's a really tight race. A lot of people are going to be super excited to see how this unfolds and how these interdivisional matchups fare over the next few weeks. But the Montreal Canadiens are right in the thick of it. And they did have opportunities to go out there and make trades. It was reported by Kent Hughes in the post-trade deadline press conference that the Canadiens are still itching for more and they still want to be better and they want to improve. They're definitely not done in this entire quote-unquote retool/rebuilding process. But the Montreal Canadiens going on this win streak, putting themselves right in the thick of the playoff race after really slumping hard in the middle of February, to see Kent Hughes stand his ground and say, yeah, we have these guys that are valuable. Armia is pretty good. Jake Evans, we re-signed him. And then you have David Savard, of course. These guys are valuable and they probably would fetch some sort of a return. But what's more important to the Montreal Canadiens right now? Getting an extra second or a third round pick for next year or beyond? Or this? The playoff race, giving the guys on the Canadiens that experience to be able to fight for their way and to potentially exhibit some more playoff hockey. To expand upon this, let's go over onto a thread on the Habs subreddit. This is what Nick Suzuki said after the trade deadline. I've hated trading all these teammates and good players for the last few years. It's definitely nice and refreshing this year to not trade anybody away. We have a lot of belief in the group. The guys that were rumored to be traded got a weight lifted off their shoulders today. And of course, you know, Nick Suzuki is a Canadiens captain's captain. He's going out there and saying the right thing, representing the team, representing the players, being the leader of this squad. He's a quiet guy, but when he needs to step into the media, when he needs to step in front of the microphone, he always says the right thing. And that has been a pattern the Canadiens have seen over the past few years. Guys are always getting traded, from the Ben Chiarots to the Ilya Kovalchuks to the Arturi Lekkonens. I mean, I'm just kind of tossing random names out there, but the Canadiens have been trading away guys as rentals at the deadline for years. So seeing this go down, where nobody got traded, it's a pretty big breath of fresh air. And to expand upon this even more, I do think it was the right call. Let's go out there and read some of the comments here. 1986 says, keeping the room together was so much more important than getting a late second or a third round pick. I have all the faith in the world that Hughes is going to go out and get some help for next season. Management obviously believes in the group and the progress they've made too. And Suzuki is a true leader, by the way. I believe that team would run through a wall for him, and he'd do the same for any of them. Hughes believes in developing players and not just having players hatch out of draft picks like an egg. Chemistry is way too easily ignored. A positive reinforcement for development has a lot of value, and right now there's a really positive vibe around the team. Breaking up the locker room by selling immediately after a win streak, which has firmly put you in the playoff mix, is terrible for motivation. On the flip side, being a buyer this year was brutal. It's one thing if they needed a winger, but hunting a 2C would have required a big overpay. Right now, there are so many teams telling themselves they can make the playoffs or win the cup. In the offseason, after those teams flame out and they decide they need a change, Montreal can make a better trade then. It also gives some time to mesh with the new pieces and cope with losing teammates. That, of course, is an interesting talking point that we didn't talk about in this video at all yet, but the Montreal Canadiens kind of do need a second center. With Kirby Dach missing the rest of the year and being in a very vulnerable spot, there certainly is volatility on the center position with the Montreal Canadiens. But that's the thing, right? Like, the way Montreal has attacked the trade deadline, where they didn't make any big additions, they didn't make any subtractions either, they just have the team they have, with Kent Hughes believing in this group of guys, saying, hey, we like what you're being able to do. We like the win streak you are on. We like the chemistry you guys have built. We know you guys are all fighting for each other in that room, on that ice surface. We know there's good motivation here. Because the Montreal Canadiens and the players on it are being given the free rein to just do what they need to do, whether or they make the playoffs or not, that ultimately, I think, is a very positive sign. And it goes to show you, I mean, so what if David Savard ends up leaving in the offseason? So what if Yoel Armia ends up leaving in the offseason? If the Montreal Canadiens, by some miracle, make the playoffs, and you give, let's just say, 4, 5, 6 games. Let's say the Canadiens lose in the first round. You get 4, 5, 6 games of Juraj Slafkovsky's first ever playoff experience. Cole Caulfield and Suzuki get reintroduced into the playoffs, but they're no longer the rookies on the team. They're not the younger guys anymore, along with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. They're the guys, the main guys, not hiding in the shadows of Philippe Danault and Brendan Gallagher doing their shutdown thing on the top line, or Shea Weber being the leader on the back end. Suzuki and Caulfield are the guys. It's a really interesting transition, and you could ultimately say there's more value in these guys getting that experience rather than trading away Armia for a third-round pick that would be used in 2026, and that guy's not going to make the NHL or even the AHL till 2027 or whatever. Like, it's kind of tough when you're always in that rebuilding stage. Montreal has had a whole bunch of draft picks over the years. They've made a lot of really good draft selections as well over the years. So now is kind of the time to say, hey, we have assets that help us in the now. We have enough young guys. We have enough prospects and picks that we have developed and used over the past few drafts. This is the time, more than any, to believe in the guys we have on the team right now and just give them the opportunity to make the playoffs, try their best. If they make it, then fantastic. If they don't make it, then okay, it's a learning experience. There certainly would have been more dissatisfaction in that room if they traded away an Armia or a Savard or whomever. Like, obviously, it's value coming in if you trade Savard for a first-round pick, but what does a first-round pick do to Juraj Slafkovsky or Caulfield or Suzuki or Hudson in the locker room? First-round pick doesn't even exist. It's not even a real, tangible, physical thing. It's just a concept. It's the right to draft before somebody else. So, ultimately, would you rather grab yourself that shot, that opportunity with players that you already know and love, or another chance? Another chance, because the Habs have had so many of these chances over the years. I honestly do think that this trade deadline period for Montreal was near perfect. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Habs not trading anybody away and how Kent Hughes might have done the right thing here. I hope you enjoyed this Vishash Roll 99, and Bye.